Good day everyone, we are the Group 5 and we are here to present to you our report about the nature of toxicology. In this discussion, we will be able to know what is toxicology, the importance of toxicology as well as the definition of poison, and under this we have here the types of poisons, types of poisoning, and evidence of poisoning. Next is the methods of examination, the history of modern toxicology, the classification of poisons, the factors in determining dissolution rate, the physical state or form of poison, the entrance and elimination of poison, and lastly, antidotes, in which we will also discuss the types of antidotes and causes of death in poisoning.
Good day everyone, my name is Renil V. Candelaria and I will discuss about what is toxicology. Toxicology is a field of science that helps us understand the harmful effects that chemical substances or situation can have on people, animal, and the environment. Some refer to toxicology as the science of safety because as a field it has evolved from our science focused on studying poisons and the adverse effects of chemical exposures to a science devoted to studying safety. It is applicable in criminal investigation and later I will discuss it. Toxicology uses the power of science to predict what and how chemicals may cause harm and then shares that information to protect public health. When talking about toxicology, it is important to keep a few things in mind. Number 1, the branch of science concerned with the nature effects and detection of poisons. Number 2, the measurement and analysis of potential toxins, intoxicating or banned substances, and prescription medications present in the person's body. Toxicology reports will determine if alcohol was a factor in the crash. Toxicology provides critical information and knowledge that can be used by regulatory agencies, decision makers, and others to put programs and policies in place to limit our exposures to these substances. The other benefits of toxicology include government, companies, and consumers. Government agencies have a sound scientific basis for establishing regulation and policies aimed at protecting and preserving human health and the environment. Companies, such as pharmaceutical and chemical, are able to develop safer products, drugs, and workplace. And lastly, consumers. Consumers have access to information that help them make decisions about their own health and prevent diseases. What are the importance of toxicology to criminal investigation? The toxicology report can provide key information as to the type of substances present in the individual and if the amount of those substances is consistent with the therapeutic dosage or is above a harmful level. It can help to determine easily in the criminal investigation through toxicology, and the toxicologists work for that situation.
I am Tracy Tabuan. I'm going to discuss about poison and its type. Poison by definition is any substance harmful to living organism. According to German-Swiss physician Paracelsus, all substances are poisons. There is none which is not a poison. The right dose differentiates a poison from a remedy. Thus, it is a substance, which is solid, liquid, or gas introduced or brought into contact with any body part, will produce ill health or death. Poisons are compounds that consist of 4 main entry routes into the body, which when inhaled, it is taken into the lungs when we breathe, ingested, swallowed either accidentally or on purpose, absorbed through the skin, and last is injected into the tissues or blood vessels, which can cause disruption of normal body function, usually through chemical reactions or activities on the molecular scale. Did you know that 92% of all poisonings happen at home? The household products implicated in most poisonings are cleaning solutions, fuels, medicines, and other materials such as glue and cosmetics. Certain animals secretes a xenobiotic poison called venom, usually injected with a bite or a sting, and other animals harbor infectious bacteria. Some household plants are poisonous to humans and animals. Types of poisons according to psychological action. First is corrosives, which is highly irritant poison which causes local destructions of tissues and characterized by nausea, vomiting, local distress. Corrosive poisons are chemicals that can be found in many household products that are considered highly reactive and thus are very dangerous upon ingestion or skin contact. This group contains products that were never intended to be ingested or inhaled. Second is irritant, one which produces irritation or inflammation of the mucous membrane and characterized by vomiting, pain in the abdomen, and purging. And irritant poisons are which cause irritation, pain, and excessive vomiting, which poisons are further divided into first, organic poisons, which consist of both metallic and non-metallic compounds. Second is organic poisons, which consist of poisons of both vegetable and animal origin. And last is mechanical poisons, which cause irritation, perforation, obstruction in the gastrointestinal tract. Third is narcotics, poisons which produce stupor, complete insensibility, or loss of feeling. Narcotic drug that produces pain relief, state of sleep, and addiction or the physical dependence on the drug. In some people, narcotics also produce euphoria or what we call a feeling of great elation. Fourth is neurotics, one which acts chiefly in the nervous system, which produce delirium, convulsion, and coma, which disordered circulation and respiration as the outstanding symptoms. Neurotic poison affects the central nervous system. Fourth is neurotics, one which acts chiefly on the nervous system and producing delirium, convulsions, and coma, which disordered circulation and respiration as the outstanding symptoms. Neurotic therefore affects the central nervous system. Fifth is tetanic, substance which acts directly upon the spinal cord, producing spasmodic and contraction of muscle as a result of stiffness or immobility of the part to which they are attached. Six is depressant or sedatives, agents which retard or depress the psychological action of an organ. These are types of drug which slow down brain activity and cause the muscles to relax. The depressant also affects the central nervous system. And last is asthenics or exhaustives, agents which produce exhaustion, marked loss of vital or muscular power. Asthenic primarily affect the muscular system. Types of poison according to pharmacological action. First is the substance characterized by local action. Local action means direct action on the affected site of the body. Examples include irritation and inflammation in the strong mineral acids and congestion, and also inflammation by irritants, the effect on motor and sensory nerves. Second is substance characterized by their action after absorption. Local and remote actions or some poisons can affect both local and remote organs. Thus, they not only affect the area with contact to the poison but also cause toxic effect after absorption in the system. For example is oxalic acid. Third is heavy metals and metalloids. General action, which means the absorbed poisons affect more than one system of the body. For example, are mercury and arsenic. Types of poison according to methods of isolation. First is volatile poisons are those isolated by distillation with or without current or steam. Isolated by distillation are characterized into this group. And the volatile substance or substances can be separated from gaseous. Second is non-volatile poisons, those that are isolated by extraction with organic solvent. Isolated by solvent extraction methods include in this group. This is a very wide category of poison which contains drugs. Third is metallic poisons, the substances which are isolated by dry ash method or by wet digestion method consisting in this group. And last is substances for which special method of isolation are required, which includes fluoride, chlorine and its compounds, bromine and its compounds.
Good day everyone, I'm Yuminadine P. Solante and now we will talk about what are the types of poisoning. From medical point of view, we have three types of poisoning. The first one is acute poisoning. So what is acute poisoning? Acute poisoning is one in which there is prompt and marked disturbance of function or death within a short time due to either taking a strong poison in an excessive single dose or several small doses at short intervals. So, ang acute poisoning daw po ay cause ng excessive or single or several doses na tinitake natin or di kaya naman na-expose tayo doon sa maikling pagitan ng oras. And ang adverse effect naman nito is occurring within 24 hours. Example po nito is alcohol hangover. We know na may hinahalong substances or chemicals sa alcohol. And ang isa na po doon ay ethanol. Ethanol po ay isang flammable, colorless, chemical compound na kadalasan makikita or hinahalo sa ating mga alcoholic drinks. Pwedeng sa beer, sa wine, sa vodka, sa whiskey. And pag uminom po tayo nito or nag-overconsumption tayo sa alak, syempre meron po yung epekto sa ating katawan. Pwedeng sa body temperature natin, sa paghinga natin, sa heart rate natin, and isa na nga pong result or adverse effect nito within 24 hours is hangover. Also, isa po sa major concern sa acute poisoning or acute exposure is death. Pwede po tayong mamatay dito. For example na lang po is yung nangyari sa Bhopal, India noong 1984. Or mas kilala po yung pangyayaring yun as a Bhopal gas tragedy. Bali, mahigit 30,000 po na tao yung naapektuhan dito. Yung iba po is naging permanently disabled. Yung iba naman po is namatay due to the exposure to methyl isocyanate na mula sa industry accident sa India. Ang methyl isocyanate po ay isa po sa most toxic of all isocyanates dahil po sa kanyang very high vapor pressure and dahil din po sa ability niya na ma-exert ang toxic effect sa numerous organs system ng tao. So, ilan po sa suggestive symptoms of acute poisoning is sudden onset of abdomen pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and collapse. Ayan yung biglang pananakit ng ating tiyan, biglang pagduduwal, pagsusuka, pagtatae, at pag-collapse. Next po is the sudden onset of coma with constriction of pupils. Dito naman, magsisimula na tayong makoma, magiging unresponsive na tayo, and hindi na magising. Next po is the sudden onset of convulsion. Magsisimula na tayo magkonvulsyon. Ito yung panginginig ng ating katawan. Pwedeng lagnatin tayo, pwedeng bumaba yung blood sugar natin after natin makaranas ng convulsion. Next is delirium with dilated pupils. Ito yung serious change in mental abilities natin. It results in confused thinking and lack of awareness sa paligid natin. Next is paralysis, especially of lower motor neuron type. Mawawala na tayo ng ability na makagalaw yung ibang parts ng katawan natin, and pwede ding lahat. Pwedeng maging temporary ito or pwede naman maging permanent din. Next is proteinuria and hematuria. Ang proteinuria naman po, ito yung high levels of protein in sa urine natin. Maaaring tayong makaranas ng dehydration or intense exercise or more serious katulad ng kidney disease or immune disorders. Next type of poisoning naman po is subacute poisoning. It is a cases of short duration and extreme violence which may include symptoms of chronic poisoning. Ang subacute poisoning naman po is repeated exposure for several weeks or months. Pwedeng ang exposure level ay mababa lang and ang symptoms niya ay katulad lang sa chronic poisoning. And kung kanina ang adverse effect ay occurring within 24 hours, dito naman po is 14 to 28 days after nga ma-expose ng paulit-ulit sa dose of drug. For example po is alcohol liver cirrhosis in 1 month. So dahil na-expose or nag-inom ka ng twice or thrice a week or mas madami pa, ayun nga, repeatedly mo yung tinitake sa loob ng 1 buwan, pwedeng ang result nun ay liver cirrhosis. And ang liver cirrhosis po ay liver damage na kadalasan epekto ng laging pag-inom natin ng alcohol. Isa pa po sa pwedeng example nito is yung pharmaceutical agent na na-expose lagi within several weeks sa kanilang workplace. And nag-result po yun ng anemia. So, ang pharmaceutical po is made by a big drug company. Sila po yung mga nag-engage, nagmamanufacture sa mga medical drugs. Lastly is chronic poisoning, kind of poisoning in which there is a gradual deterioration of function of tissues and may or may not result in death. It is produced by either taking several small doses at long intervals or taking only toxic doses of the drug. It is caused by smaller doses over a long period of time, resulting in gradual worsening. Dito naman po, ang adverse effects is occurring within 6 to 12 months. Ibig sabihin, mas matagal po ang exposure and mas severe po yung damage at epekto na nagagawa nito sa ating katawan. For example na lang po is alcohol, liver cancer in lifespan. Dahil nga po sa paulit-ulit na pag-iinom ng alcohol, sabihin na natin 6 or 8 months mo yun lagi ginagawa, ang pwedeng epekto nun ay liver cancer. Isa sa pinakamalala and life-threatening illness na maaari nating maranasan. Ilan po sa mga symptoms of chronic poisoning is the symptoms are exaggerated after the administration of suspected food, fluid, or medicine. Next is depression and gradual deterioration of the general condition of the patient or seen. Next is repeated attacks of diarrhea, vomiting. Next is when the patient is removed from his usual surroundings, the symptoms disappear. Next is traces of poison may be found in the urine, stool, or vomit. From the legal point of view naman, we have accidental poisoning, those in which the poison was taken without intention to cause death. It may be taken by mistake or not knowing that it is poisonous. Accidental meaning unintentionally or unexpectedly. Hindi mo gustong mangyari yun. Hindi mo sinasadya makainom or makakain ng substance na yun. Next is suicidal. Those in which the poison was taken by the victim voluntary for the purpose of taking his own life. Ito naman, voluntary mo siyang tinake talaga. Voluntary mo siyang ginawa. Willingly ka na ininom yung substance na yun dahil sa kagustuhan mong bawiin ng sarili mong buhay. Next is homicidal. Those in which the poisoning was given willfully, only one and one intent to cause death to the victim. Dito naman po, willingly din, pero iba naman, sa ibang tao naman, hindi sa sarili. Willingly mo siyang ibinigay sa ibang tao dahil sa intention mong patayin or lasunin talaga siya. Next is undetermined, those in which the history is hazy as to how the poison was obtained and why it was administered. Dito naman po undetermined, ibig sabihin not identified. Hindi alam kung paano or saan nakuha yung poison, hindi alam kung ano ba yung history nito, hindi din alam kung bakit binigay or meron nito. Evidence of poisoning in the living body. The evidence of poisoning will depend upon whether the poisoning is acute or chronic. In acute poisoning, symptoms appear suddenly while the individual is in good health. The person is usually affected with a group of symptoms of definite characteristic out of consonance with his previous state health. While in chronic poisoning, the onset on the symptoms is more gradual and insidious due to the small quantity of poison which has been administered on such occasion, since the intention of the poison is to kill his victim slowly in order to avert suspicion. Next is evidence of poisoning in the dead. In all cases of poisoning, whether homicidal, suicidal, fatal, or not, the presence of poison in the dead may be obtained from post-mortem examination or autopsy. It is an examination of a dead body, especially to determine the cause of death. Next is evidence from chemical analysis of the organs, takes from the body. The most important proof of poisoning is the detection of poison with the body. In some cases, however, on account of the decomposition and the tissue, the lapse of the time between death and examination, and the instability of some poisons, negative results may be obtained even if at the time of death certain poisons are present.
Hello everyone, my name is Eric Contura and I am going to discuss with you the different types of instrument or methods of examination in identifying poison or drugs in our body. So first is the differentiation by determining physical characteristic like melting point and boiling point. Melting point is the temperature at which a solid becomes a liquid at a standard atmospheric pressure. The documentability of this technique depends upon the instrument used. So next is we have a crystalline test. Under this, we have a microcrystalline test. So this technique uses the microscopic crystals produced by chemical reaction to provide information regarding the identity of the substance being tested. A series of positive microcrystalline tests can be considered to be a conclusive test. So this technique can be considered documentable if photomicrographs of the crystal used for identification are taken at the time of the examination. Another one is a chemical examination or chemical test. It can be simply subdivided into wet chemical and instrumental procedure. Wet chemical procedures are used as a screening method or for sample preparation only, while the instrumental procedures are used for screening or as a confirmation tool. So additional information is on instrumental examination. It is a documentable testing methods. This point is a key element of the confirmation and peer review process, while the wet chemical procedure are used during the initial stage of the identification process. They consist of chemical color test, microcrystalline test, thin layer chromatography, and also a liquid extraction techniques. Since most poisons do not produce characteristic pathological lesions, a toxicologist must resort to the chemical and instrumental tests such as ultraviolet spectrophotometry and gas chromatography or mass spectrometry to confirm the identity of a given poison. Spectrophotometric test reveals the ultraviolet and infrared colors spectra peculiar to certain organic substances like barbiturates, strychnine, and morphine specimens. Analytical absorption spectroscopy in the ultraviolet and visible region of the electromagnetic spectrum has been widely used in pharmaceutical and biomedical analysis for quantitative purposes, and with certain limitations for the characterization of drugs, impurities, metabolites, and related substances. Ultraviolet is a documentable technique that uses of the absorption of spectroscopy, then ultraviolet radiation to classify a substance. Then lastly, we have a chromatography test or chromatography examination. So chromatography is a separation technique capable of separating minute quantities of chemical from similar substances. Chromatography is a documentable separation technique that uses gas flowing or gas chromatography through a coated tube to separate compounds by their size, weight, and chemical reactivity with the column coating. So as I said earlier, so gas chromatography used to separate the compounds by their size, weight, and chemical reactivity with the column coating. So it is also a type of chromatography test in which the sample usually dissolved in a solvent. It also vaporized and carried by an inert gas through a column pack with absorbent to any of several types of detectors. Each component of the sample separated from the others by passage through the column produces a separate peak in the detector. So it is also instrumental method for identifying the chemical constitution of the substance by separating gaseous ions according to their differing mass and charge, often be combined with the other analytical techniques such as a gas chromatography, liquid chromatography, inductively coupled plasma, and mass spectrometry. So the second common type of chromatography is seen in the toxicology laboratory is the high performance liquid chromatography or HPLC. The principles are the same as the gas chromatography, except in HPLC the column is much shorter. It is usually about 15 to 30 centimeter in length. Then the separation takes place at much lower temperature. It usually employs at least some water as a solvent, and it does not require vaporization of the sample. And that's all. Thank you for listening.
Now, let's talk about the history of modern toxicology. The word toxicology was derived from the Greek word toxikon, that means poison, and Greek word also logos, that means scientific study. And this term was coined in 17th century. Next is let's talk about Paracelsus. Paracelsus was a Swiss and German physician and alchemist, best known for articulating the concept of the dose makes the poisons. Ibig sabihin nito is ang lahat ng substances na meron dito sa ating mundo ay poisonous. Nakadepende na lamang ito sa dosage na ini-intake natin sa ating sarili. Kasi ang ating body ay nangangailangan lamang ng specific amount of dosage upang maging healthy ito at hindi maging poisonous. And dahil dito sa concept niya to, is na-recognize siya bilang father of toxicology. Pero, during his era, the poisons was used for the punishment of death or capital punishment. Just like for example is what happened to Socrates. Socrates has been convicted of corrupting the youth of Athens and in introducing the strange gods, and has sentenced to die by drinking a poison hemlock. Ang hemlock ay isang nakakalasong damo o halaman. Next naman po is pag-usapan natin si Matthew Orfila. Si Matthew Orfila ay kinikilala bilang modern father of toxicology. Kung kanina ay si Paracelsus ay ang father of toxicology, si Matthew Orfila naman ay ang modern father of toxicology. And siya ay nakilala dito dahil sa kanyang pag-aaral ng classifications ng mga poisons. The study and classification of toxic substances was first systematized by Matthew Orfila in 1787 to 1853. In the 19th century, pinag-aralan niya ang mga functions and identity ng mga poisons. And naghanap din siya ng mga maaaring maging antidote sa mga poisons na kanyang mga inaral. And also, he studied how to treat the toxic injuries. And noong 1840s, he was asked to investigate the notorious case of Charles Lafargue, whose wife has been accused with murder by poisoning his food with arsenic. After 4 failed chemical analysis, Orfila was finally able to detect the arsenic in the body of the victim. That leads the court to convict Madame Lafargue of killing his husband. Next is kilalanin din natin si Henry Matthew. Si Henry Matthew naman ay kilala bilang father of clinical toxicology. Siya ay nakilala bilang father of clinical toxicology dahil sa nilabas niyang mga libro, research at mga book at letters na patungkol sa clinical toxicology. And noong 9th century, Dioscorides, a Greek physician, classified 3 poisons. Nag-classified siya ng 3 types of poisons. Una dito ay ang plant poisons. Best example dito ay ang hemlock, ang ginamit upang patayin si Socrates. O ito ang poisons na pinainom sa kanya upang mahatulan siya ng kamatayan. Second is animal poisons. Mostly, it came from snakes, frog, or spiders. Sila ay nagtataglay ng mga poisons na maaaring makasakit ng kapwa nila animal or ng mga tao. And third is the mineral poisons. Best examples here are the mercury or sulfide. And mas aralin pa natin ang mga iba't ibang classifications ng poisons sa susunod na topic.
Good day everyone, I am Janelle Labina, Austria, and I will discuss to you the classification of poisons. So, poisons are such of diverse natures that they are classified by origin, physical form, chemical nature, chemical activity, target site, or use. So first, let's define what is poisons. So poisons is any substance that when relatively small amounts are ingested, inhaled, or absorbed or applied to, injected into, or developed within the body has chemical action that causes damage to structure or disturbance of function, producing symptoms, illness, or death. So while classifying the poisons, there are two mainly characteristics to be considered. Both of them have equal importance in analyzing and determining the type of actions. The two main characteristics, first is the mode of action and the second one is chemical nature. So poisons classified under the mode of actions are collectively subdivided to corrosive, irritant, and systematic poisons. The irritant poisons group as organic, inorganic, and mechanical. The systematic poisons group into neurotic, cardiac, and associated poisons. So moreover, the neurotic poisons are further grouped into cerebral, spinal, and peripheral. And now, let's talk about the second characteristics or the main characteristic of poisons, which is the chemical nature. So according to chemical nature, the poisons was grouped into gaseous, volatile organic, volatile inorganic, non-volatile organic, poisons of neutral, acidic, and alkaline. Next is plant poisons, and lastly is the miscellaneous poisons. Poisons categorized based on mode of actions. So the actions of all poisons are almost the same. Commonly, they either stop the supply of oxygen to the body tissues or inhibit the enzymes associated with the respiration mechanism, and the person dies due to the stoppage of oxygen availability. So first is the local action. It is direct action on the affected site of the body. So under this, first is the corrosive poison. So this kind of poisons cause inflammation on the site of contact and ulceration of the tissues exposed, compromising of both strong acid and alkali. Strong acid examples are mineral acid and organic acid. And strong alkali, caustic soda, carbonate, sodium, and potassium are some of the examples. Next is the irritant poison. So this group of poisons cause irritation, pain which affects the abdomen indicated by excessive vomiting and purging. These poisons are further divided into inorganic irritants and organic irritants. So inorganic irritants consist of metallic and non-metallic. The metallic are the arsenic, antimony, mercury, lead, and radioactive substances are some of the examples. And non-metallic, phosphorus, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. Inorganic irritants, it consists of poisons of vegetables and animal origin. So, plant poisons. The study of plant poisons is known as the phytotoxicology. Examples are castor, marking nut, ergot, calotropis, and etc. While the animal poisons examples are snakes' venom, insects, cantharides, and spiders. Third is the mechanical irritants. This kind of poisons cause irritation, perforation, or a hole that develops through the wall of a body organ. So, this kind of problem may occur in the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, or gallbladder. Obstruction in the gastrointestinal tract like powder glass, diamond dust, chopped hair, and etc. And now let's talk about the systematic poisons. This group of poisons affect the vital systems of the body. It generally affects the nervous system, cardiovascular system, and our respiratory system. So first, under this is the neurotic poisons. This kind of poisons act primarily on our nervous system through a local irritant action. These poisons affect the different parts of our nervous system such as cerebral poisons, spinal poisons, and peripheral poisons. So cerebral poisons, if a neurotic poisons act majorly on the cerebral parts, especially on the cerebrum, they are called cerebral poisons. And the examples are somniferous such as opioids. Next is inebriants such as alcohol, anesthetics, ether, sedatives and hypnotics, fuels, and agrochemical compounds. And lastly is deliriants such as diura, cannabis, cocaine, and belladonna. In spinal poisons, if the poisons act on the spinal part, it is termed as aspinal poisons. Examples are the Nox vomica and its alkaloids and gilsemium. So in cardiac poisons naman, it have a detrimental effect on our heart functions. And the examples are digitals, oleander, aconite, and nicotine. And third poisons is asphyxiant poison. So this category of poisons cause asphyxia to the cells or tissues. So asphyxia is a condition of too sufficient supply of oxygen which results into shelter. So this causes oxygen deprivation. Oxygen deprivation can cause unconsciousness and in severe cases can cause to death. And the examples are carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, sewer gases, and some wire gases. So now, let's discuss the poisons categorized based on chemical nature. In toxicological analysis, it is required to know about chemical properties and its isolation methods. Hence, the poisons are classified upon their chemical nature. So, first are the gaseous poisons. This type of poisons are inhaled directly and it affects the oxygen carrier. And examples is our blood and further damages the tissues of the air passages and lungs. And the examples are carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, tear gas, and etc. Second is volatile inorganic poison. So this group of substances usually follows the slow inhalation of vapors in order to become intoxicated. So and examples are cyanide, phosphine, arsine, phosgene, chloride, and etc. Third is volatile organic poison. So this kind of substances have high vapor pressure at ordinary room temperature. And the examples are the ethanol, formaldehyde, and acetaldehyde. So number 4 is the non-volatile inorganic or anions poisons. And the examples are anionic halides, sulfate, phosphides, cyanide, and etc. Number 5, non-volatile inorganic or cations poisons. And some of the examples are mercury, thallium, lead, bismuth, and etc. Number 6 is non-volatile inorganic neutral poisons or pesticides. So examples are organophosphates, organochlorides, carbamates, and pyrethroids. Number 7 is non-volatile inorganic acidic compound or acidic drugs. Examples are barbiturates, sulfa, phenolic compounds or phenolcrazole, and etc. and salicylates. Number 8 is non-volatile inorganic alkaline compounds or basic drugs. Examples are alkaloids or benzodiazepine. Number 9, plant poisons. Examples are datura, aconite, oleander, nox vomica, and etc. Number 10 is miscellaneous poisons. So under miscellaneous poisons is mechanical poisons, food poisoning, and animal insect poison. So in mechanical poison, some of the examples are diamond dust, glass powder, and chopper. And in food poisoning is mycotoxins, bacteria, and food-borne microbes. And in animal or insect poisons are snake venom, scorpion, poisonous bees, poisonous ants. Next is type of poisons. First is solid poisons. So this kind of poisons do not get absorbed easily into the blood. They should be dissolved in liquid to get absorbed. So for examples are the lead, arsenic, mercury, and etc. Next kind Next type of poisons is liquid poison. So this kind of poisons contain both organic and inorganic liquid. Organic liquids are more volatile than inorganic liquids. So in third is the gaseous poison. So this kind of poisons are absorbed by inhalation such as carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. Medical legal classification to poisons. Poisoning is known as the injurious effect caused by the action of a poison or a detrimental chemical substance. It leads to the development of adverse reaction toward the harmful chemicals or drugs. It is basically differentiated in three categories. First is the homicidal poisons. The poisons which are used to kill the person or the other persons are known as homicidal poisons. And some of the chemicals or substances that can be used are aconite, abrus, pecaturus, arsenic, and etc. Next is suicidal poison. So this kind of poisons used to self-killing such as opium, barbiturate, agricultural poisons, and etc. Next is accidental poison. So this kind of poisons which cause toxicity by accidents or are used in mistaken of others. Next is abortifacient agents or poisons. So this kind of poisons are used to procure abortion are known as abortifacient. Poisons, for examples, are quinine or alkaloid, calotropis, croton, oleander, marking nut, and etc. So this kind of agents or poison used to terminate pregnancy. And also next is super stupefying agents or poison. So this kind of substances are used to stupefy the human being. O ito yung uri ng mga drugs na nagkakos o nagsasanhi sa isang tao na pagiging groggy o hindi na siya aware sa nangyayari sa kaniyang paligid. So next is medical legal classification based on method. First is volatile and gaseous poisons. Here it is isolated by distillations which categorized into this group. So the volatile substances can be separated from gaseous. Volatile substances are methanol, ethanol, benzene, toluene, acetone, chloroform, chloral, hydrate, and etc. Gaseous poisons are ethane, butane, and etc. Next is organic non-volatile poisons. Here it was isolated by solvent extraction. Methods include in this group. This is a very wide category of poisons which contains drugs such as opiates and synthetic narcotics, sedatives, hypnotics, stimulants, and etc. These are alkaloids that derive from opium and operates and was regulated under NDPS or the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances. The muscle relaxant are used to relieve anxiety. These are also called CNS depressants. So LSD, amphetamine, cocaine, etc. are the best examples of stimulants. So next we have the metallic poisons. So when ingested cause a delirious or harmful effects. So this is known as the metallic poisoning. So the substances are isolated by dry ash method or by wet digestion method constituting this group. The common poisons of this group are arsenic, lead, mercury, antimony, bismuth, and etc. So lastly is the anion. So anion is isolated by dialysis. So most commonly encountered anions in poisoning cases are bromide, cyanide, fluoride, hypochlorite, nitrite, phosphate, sulfate, and etc. And now I will tackle the factors in determining dissolution rate. First, what is dissolution? Dissolution is a process in which a solid substance solubilizes in a given solvent to yield a solution. Mass transfer from the solid surface to the liquid phase. And what is rate of dissolution? It is the amount of drug substance that goes in solution per unit time under standardized conditions of liquid or solid interface. temperature, and solvent composition. There are five factors affecting dissolution rate. First is physiochemical properties of drugs. Second is drug product formulation factors. Third is processing factors. Four is factors relating dissolution apparatus. And lastly is factors relating dissolution test parameters. And now let's tackle first the physiochemical properties of drugs. Under this, first is drug solubility. It simply says that solubility plays important role in controlling dissolution from dosage form. Aqueous solubility of a drug is a major factor that determines its dissolution rate. The minimum aqueous solubility is 1% that requires to avoid potential solubility limited absorption problems. Second is salt formation. It is one of the common approaches used to increase drug solubility and dissolution rate. It has always been assumed that sodium salt dissolve faster than their corresponding insoluble acids. Examples are sodium and potassium salts of penicillin, sulfa drugs, phenytoin, barbiturate, and etc. Third is particle size. There is a direct relationship between surface area of drug and its dissolution rate. Since surface area increases with decrease in particle size, higher dissolution rates may be achieved through reduction of particle size. Here, particle size and surface area are inversely related to each other. There are two types of surface, and they are: first is absolute surface area, which is the total surface area of any particle. Effective surface area, which is the area of solid surface exposed to the dissolution medium, and the effective surface area is directly related to the dissolution rate. Moreover, greater the effective surface area, more intimate the contact between the solid surface and the aqueous solvent, and faster dissolution rate. Number 4. Solid state characteristic. Solid phase characteristics of drug, such as amorphicity, crystallinity, state of hydration, and polymorphic structures have significant influence on dissolution rate. And number 5, co-precipitation. Dissolution rate of sulfathiazole could be significantly increased by co-precipitation of the drug with povidone. Co-precipitation are used for enhancing the dissolution rate of drug due to: first is formation energetic amorphous drug phase, or drug being molecularly dispersed, or formation of coacervates. And lastly is the shape of tablet. It affects the dissolution of the tablet. The second factor affecting dissolution rate is drug product formulation factors. Dissolution rate of pure drug can be altered or can be significantly changed when mixed with various adjuncts during manufacturing process, such as diluents, dyes, binders, granulating agents, disintegrants, and lubricants. First is diluents. Diluent in capsule and tablet influence the dissolution rate of drug. Diluents are commonly added to tablet and capsule formulation if the required dose is inadequate to produce the necessary bulk. Number 2 is disintegrants. So the disintegrating agent added before and after the granulation affect the dissolution rate. This kind of agents overcome cohesive strength of tablet and break them on contact with water, which is important for tablet to dissolve. Number 3, binders and granulating agents. The hyperbolic binder increase dissolution rate of purely wettable drug. Binders hold the ingredients in a tablet together. Binders ensure that tablets and granules can be formed with required mechanical strength and give volume to low active dose tablets. Number 4 is lubricants. So lubricants are hydrophobic in nature or mechanic esterates and prolong tablet disintegration time by forming water repellent coat around individual granules. This retarding effect is most factor in influencing rate of dissolution of solid dosage forms. To aid flow of granules, lubricants used to reduce interparticle friction, sticking of particles to dies and punches, and examples are sodium and magnesium, esterates, and waxes. And number 5, surfactants. Surfactants enhance the dissolution rate of purely soluble drug. This is due to lowering of interfacial tension, increasing effective surface area, and in which in turn results in faster dissolution rate. Surfactants enhance or retard drug absorption, also promoting the wetting and dissolution of drugs, for better membrane contact of drug for absorption and enhanced membrane permeability of the drug. Number 6, water-soluble dyes. The solution rate of single crystal of sulfathiazole was found to decrease significantly in presence of F, D, and C, blue number 1. The inhibiting effect was related to preferential absorption of dye molecules on primarily dissolution sources of crystal surfaces. They inhibit the micellar solubilization effect of bile salts on drug. And number 7, coating polymers. Tablet with MC coating were found to exhibit lower dissolved profiles than those coated with HPMC at 37 degree. The differences are attributed to thermal dilatation of FC at temperature near 37 degree, which create a barrier to the zone process and essentially changes the saline medium. This kind of mechanism is substantiated by the fact that at temperature below the gel point and at increased agitation affect or disappears. So, coating is a process by which an essentially dry outer layer of coating materials is applied to the surface of a dosage form, and agents which are used in this coating process is called coating agents. The third factor affecting the solution rate of drug is processing factors. It consists of first method of granulation. So granulation process in general enhances the solution rate of purely soluble drug. Wet granulation is traditionally considered superior, but exception is the solution profile of sodium salicylate tablets prepared by both wet granulation and direct compression, where the dissolution was found more complete and rapid in latter case. Wet granulation has been shown to improve the dissolution rate of purely soluble drug by imparting hydrophilic property to the surface of granules. Second is compression force. The compression process influences density, porosity, hardness, disintegration time, and dissolution of tablet. Higher compression force causes the formation, crushing, or fracture of drug particle or convert a spherical granules into disc-shaped particle. Number 3, unit operations involved. These kind of interactions occur during any unit operation such as mixing, milling, blending, drying, or granulating result change in the solution. Number 4, storage condition. The dissolution rate of hydrochlorothiazide tablets granulated with acacia exhibited decrease in dissolution rate during 1 year of aging. At RTA, similar decrease was observed in tablets stored for 14 days at 50 to 80 degree or for 4 weeks at 37 degrees Celsius. The tablet with starch gave no change in dissolution rate or at elevated temperature. Solvent and drug. In order to prevent turbulence and sustain a reproducible laminar flow, which is essential for obtaining reliable results, agitation should be maintained at a relatively low rate. Number 4 factors affecting the dissolution rate of drug is factors relating to dissolution apparatus. First under this is agitation. It is the relationship between intensity of agitation and rate of dissolution varies considerably account to type of agitation used, the degree of laminar and turbulent flow in system, the shape and design of stirrer, and physiochemical properties of solid. The speed of agitation generates a flow that continuously changes the solid or liquid interface between solvent and drug. In order to prevent turbulence and sustain a reproducible laminar flow, which is essential for obtaining reliable results, agitation should be maintained at a relatively low rate. And second is steering element alignment. The USP or NFXV states that the axis of steering element must not deviate more than 0.mm from the axis of the solution vessel, which defines centering of steering shaft to within 2 mm. And lastly, sampling probe position and filter. In sampling probe, it can affect the hydrodynamic of the system, or the concentration varies at different places of the system. And so the change in the solution rate. The last factors affecting the solution rate of drug is factors relating the solution test parameters. First is the temperature. Drug solubility is temperature dependent. Therefore, careful control of temperature during the solution process is extremely important. Temperature affects solubility. Most solids are more soluble at higher temperatures. Gases become less soluble as temperature increases. Moreover, the temperature generally, an increase in the temperature of the solution increases the solubility of a solid solute. For example, a greater amount of sugar will dissolve in warm water than in cold water. A few solid solutes, however, are less soluble in warmer solutions. For all gases, solubility decreases as the temperature of the solution rises. An example of this is soda. The solubility of the carbon dioxide gas decreases when a soda is warm, making the soda flat. Second is the solution medium. It is very important factor affecting the solution, and itself affected by number of factors, such as first is the effect of pH. Weak acids, the dissolution rate increases with increase in pH, whereas for weak bases, increase with decrease in pH. It simply says that the solubility of a weak acidic drug or weak basic drug is influenced by the pH of the fluid. The rate of dissolution is increases while increasing the pH solution. Next is the volume of the solution medium and sink conditions. If the drug is poorly soluble, a relatively large amount of fluid should be used if complete dissolution is to be expected. The sink condition describes a dissolution system that is sufficiently dilute so that the dissolution process is not impeded by approach to saturation of the compound of interest. And lastly is the deaeration of the solution medium. Dissolve air in distilled water and could significantly lower its pH and consequently affect the dissolution rate of drugs that are sensitive to pH changes. Weak acids. Moreover, the selection of a dissolution medium should be based on drug substance and formulation characteristics as well as on interactions among components. It includes acidic solutions, buffers, surfactants, and surfactants with acid or buffers.
Good day everyone! I'm Sophia Dinglasan and I'm here to discuss to you the physical state or form of poisons. So here we have three different forms of poison. The first one is the physical form, the second one is the chemical form, and the third one is the gaseous form. So in physical form, gaseous, volatile, vaporous forms of poisons act faster than liquid poisons as they are quickly absorbed. Similarly, liquid poisons act faster than solid poisons. This is because solids are generally not well absorbed into the blood. They must be dissolved in the aqueous liquid lining the intestinal tract if ingested, and the respiratory tract if inhaled. Solids dissolve at different rates in fluid. For example, compared with lead sulfate granules, granules of lead are practically non-toxic when ingested because elemental lead is essentially insoluble in water while lead sulfate is slightly soluble and absorbable. Ito po ay kahit na yung dalawang solid poisons na hindi magkapareho ng size pero iisa lang ang uri ng kanilang chemical ay maaari pa rin po na magkaiba yung kanilang level of toxicity because of the differences in dissolution rates or yung rate ng kanilang paglusaw. Ang tatandaan lang po natin dito ay kapag po mas maliit yung kanilang size, mas madali o mas mabilis po na maa-absorb ng ating katawan yung toxicity kaysa sa mas malaki nitong portion. Meaning, kapag po mas mabilis siyang ma-dissolve, mas ma-absorb po ito kaagad ng ating katawan. So, the next is the chemical form. But for the introduction of this, we know that everything in physical world around us is made of chemicals. The earth we walk on, the air we breathe, the food we eat, the cars we drive, and the houses we live in are all made of various chemicals. Like living organisms such as plants, animals, and humans are also made of chemicals. Some of the chemicals we contact in our daily lives are man-made. These man-made chemicals include some drugs, cosmetics, workplace products, household cleaning agents, and so on. Many more chemicals which we are exposed to each day occur naturally and are found in our food, in the air, and in water. There are far more natural chemicals in our environment than man-made ones. Both man-made and natural chemicals can have poisonous effects. And for the chemical form or the liquid poisons, few substances like mercury or arsenic are not poisonous as they are insoluble and cannot be absorbed when they are in combination with other substances like mercury chloride, arsenic oxide, and etc. In other cases, the action is vice versa. For example, there are some substances that become inert in combination with silver nitrate and hydraulic acid and are deadly and poisonous when present in pure forms. A poison in a liquid form can be absorbed by ingestion or by inhalation or through the skin because organic liquids are more volatile than inorganic liquids. Inhalation of organic vapors is more common. Although vapors are generally absorbed in the lungs, some vapors that are highly soluble in liquids are also absorbed through the skin. This is why we have chemical poisoning. And when we say liquid poisons, ito po yung mga material that flows freely like water. Marami po tayong hazardous substances na in liquid form at normal temperatures. Ang ilan po rito ay nakakadamage ng ating skin or ng ating mga balat. Ang ilan naman ay dumadaan sa skin natin at pumapasok ito sa ating katawan na maaaring maging sanhi ng skin damage. Ang mga liquids din po ay nag-evaporate at ito ay nagpo-form into gases na maaari nating malanghap. And the third one is the gaseous forms or the gaseous poisons. These poisons are absorbed by inhalation such as carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Ito po yung mga gas na may individual chemical molecules dispersed in the air or mga nakakalat sa hangin. Like for example, oxygen at normal temperature and pressure. And some gases are flammable, explosive, and or toxic. The presence of a gas may be difficult to detect if it has no color or odor and does not cause immediate irritation. Such gases like carbon monoxide may still be very hazardous. Now, we have here the other forms or physical state of poison. The first one is vapor. A vapor is the gas form of substance that is primarily a liquid at normal pressure and temperature. Most organic solvents evaporate and produce vapors. Vapors can be inhaled into the lungs and in some cases may irritate the eyes, skin, or the respiratory tract. Some are flammable, explosive, and or toxic. The term vapor pressure or evaporation rate is used to indicate the tendency for different liquids to evaporate. The second one is dust. A dust consists of small solid particles in the air. Dust may be created when solids are pulverized or ground or when powder, which we call settled dust, becomes airborne. Dust may be hazardous because they can be inhaled into the respiratory tract. Larger particles of dust are usually trapped in the nose and windpipe or our trachea, where they can be expelled. But smaller particles, or which we call the respirable dust, can reach and damage the lungs. Some, like lead dust, may then enter the bloodstream through the lungs. Some organic dust, such as grain dust, may explode when they reach high concentrations in the air. The third one is fume. A fume consists of very small, fine solid particles in the air that form when solid chemicals, often metals, are heated to very high temperatures, evaporate to vapor, and finally become solid again. The welding or brazing of metal, for example, produces metal fumes. Fumes are hazardous because they are easily inhaled. Many metal fumes can cause an illness called metal fume fever, consisting of fever, chills, and aches like the flu. Inhalation of other metal fumes such as lead can cause poisoning without causing metal fume fever. The fourth one is fiber. A fiber is a solid particle whose length is at least 3 times its width. The degree of hazard depends upon the size of the fiber. Smaller fibers such as asbestos can lodge in the lungs and cause serious harms. Larger fibers are trapped in the respiratory tract and are expelled without reaching the lung. The last one is mist. A mist consists of liquid particles of various sizes which are produced by agitation or spraying of liquids. Mist can be hazardous when they are inhaled or sprayed on the skin. The spraying of pesticide and machining of metals using metal working fluids are two situations where mists are commonly produced. Now, let's move on and discuss the entrance and elimination of poisons. There are 4 pathways by which poisons enter the body or where the exposure to chemicals may occur. The following routes are the inhalation, the second one is ingestion, the third one is contact with the skin and eye, and the fourth one is injection. The first one is inhalation. The word gases is used here to represent both gases and vapors. Absorption of inhaled gases takes place mainly in the lungs. Before the gases reach the lung, however, they pass through the nose, where highly water-soluble or highly reactive. Gas molecules are retained by mucosa. Inhalation of toxic vapors, mist, gases, or dust can produce poisoning by absorption through the mucous membrane of the mouth, throat, and lungs and can seriously damage these tissues by local action. Inhaled gases or vapors may pass rapidly into the capillaries of the lungs and be carried into the circulatory system. These absorptions can be extremely rapid. The rate will vary with the concentration of the toxic substance, its solubility in tissue fluids, the depth of respiration, and the amount of blood circulation, which means that it will be much higher when the person is active than when he or she is at rest. The degree of injury resulting from exposure to toxic vapors, mist, gases, and dust depends on the toxicity of the material and its solubility in tissue fluids, as well as on its concentration and duration of exposure. Chemical activity and the time of response after exposure are not necessarily a measure of the degree of toxicity. Several chemicals, for example mercury and its derivatives, and some of the common solvents, for example benzene, are cumulative poisons that can produce body damage through exposure to small concentration over a long period of time. The second one is ingestion. Ingestion is the most common route of exposure to toxic chemicals. The major sites of absorption of ingested poisons are the stomach and the small intestine, with most of the absorption taking place in the latter. The intestine has a greater blood supply and a much larger surface area. And many of the chemicals used in the laboratory are extremely dangerous if they enter the mouth and are swallowed. It is expressed in grams or milligrams per kilogram of body weight. In addition, many chemicals may damage the tissues of the mouth, nose, throat, lungs, and gastrointestinal tract and produce systemic poisoning if absorbed through the tissues. And to prevent the entry of toxic chemicals into the mouth, laboratory workers will wash their hands before eating, smoking, or applying cosmetics immediately after the use of any toxic substance and before leaving the laboratory. Food and drink may not be stored or consumed in areas where hazardous chemicals, radioactive materials, or biohazardous materials are being used. Chemicals should never be tasted, and pipetting and siphoning of liquid should never be done by mouth. Next is gastrointestinal tract. And due to the food poisoning, this affects the gastrointestinal tract, which is the organs that food and liquids travel through when they are swallowed, digested, absorbed, and leave the body as feces. When germs that cause food poisoning get into our system, they can release toxins. And these toxins are poisons and can cause diarrhea and vomiting. Usually, doctors use food poisonings to describe an illness that comes on quickly after eating contaminated food. The third one is the contact with skin and eyes. Contact with the skin is a frequent mode of chemical injury. A common result of skin contact is a localized irritation, but an appreciable number of materials are absorbed through the skin with sufficient rapidity to produce systemic poisoning. And the main portals of entry for chemicals through the skin are the hair follicles, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, and cuts or abrasions of the outer layers of the skin. The follicles and glands are abundantly supplied with blood vessels, which facilitates the absorption of chemicals into the body. Next is contact of chemicals with the eyes. Contact of chemicals with the eyes is a particular concern because these organs are so sensitive to irritants. Few substances are innocuous in contact with the eyes, most are painful and irritating, and a considerable number are capable of causing burns and loss of vision. Alkaline materials, phenols, and strong acids are particularly corrosive and can cause permanent loss of vision. Also, eyes are very vascular and provide for rapid absorption of many chemicals. Skin and eye contact with chemicals should be avoided by use of appropriate protective equipment. In the event of skin contact, the affected area should be flushed with water and medical attention should be sought if symptoms persist. In the event of eye contact, the eye or the eyes should be flushed with water for 15 minutes and medical attention should be sought whether or not symptoms persist. The fourth one is injection. Exposure to toxic chemicals by injection seldom occurs in a chemical laboratory. However, it can inadvertently occur through mechanical injury from glass or metal contaminated with chemicals or when chemicals are handled in syringe. Although not a common route of exposure to poisons, it includes all the other routes that do not involve the gastrointestinal tract. It has a systemic effect on the body. The injection is the only route in which the entire amount exposed is absorbed regardless of the chemical administered because the chemical is introduced directly into the body. And chemicals may be injected first intravenously or directly into a vein. It is one of the fastest modes of drug administration as the injection is directly taken and the drug is transferred directly into the veins and thus is directly circulated into the blood quickly. The intravenous route of administration is commonly used for hydration or to provide nutrients for those who cannot or will not consume food or water by mouth. The intravenous route is the fastest way to deliver medication and fluid replacement throughout the body as they are introduced directly into the circulatory system and thus quickly distributed. The second one is intramuscularly or into a muscle. In this mode, the drug or poison is administered into the muscle of the thigh, upper arm or buttock. An intramuscular injection delivers medication into a muscle. Doctors frequently use intramuscular injections to administer vaccines and certain other drugs. They are used to deliver drugs and vaccines. Several drugs and almost all injectable vaccines are delivered this way. Intramuscular injections may be used instead of intravenous injections because some drugs are irritating to veins or because a suitable vein cannot be located. The third one is subcutaneously or under the skin. In this mode, the drug is injected into the layer beneath the skin, or in other words, the subcutaneous layer. The drug then goes to the small blood vessels and then to the bloodstream. This mode is used for mostly those protein drugs that would be destroyed if administered through the gastrointestinal tract. And a subcutaneous injection is a mode or a method of administering medication. And subcutaneous means under the skin. In this type of injection, a short needle is used to inject a drug into the tissue layer between the skin and the muscle. Medication given this way is usually absorbed more slowly than if injected into a vein, sometimes over a period of 24 hours. This type of injection is used when other methods of administration might be less effective. For example, some medication can be given by mouth because acid and enzymes in the stomach would destroy them. Lastly, intraperitoneally, or within the membrane lining the organs of the abdomen. Intraperitoneal injections are a way to administer therapeutics and drugs through a peritoneal route or the body cavity. They are one of the few ways drugs can be administered to injection and have uses in research involving animals, drug administration to treat ovarian cancers, and much more. It is more often applied to animals than to humans. In general, it is prepared when large amount of blood replacement fluids are needed or when low blood pressure or other problems prevent the use of a suitable blood vessels for intravenous injection. In humans, the method is widely used to administer chemotherapy drugs to treat some cancers, particularly ovarian cancer. Although controversial, intraperitoneal use in ovarian cancer has been recommended as a standard of care. Fluids are injected intraperitoneally in infants and also used for peritoneal dialysis. And when we say peritoneal dialysis is a type of dialysis that uses a peritoneum in a person's abdomen as the membrane through which fluid and dissolved substances are exchanged with the blood. Now, let's move to the discussion about the elimination of poison in our body. We have here the elimination of unabsorbed poison and the elimination of absorbed poison. And for the elimination of unabsorbed poison, elimination of the unabsorbed poison depends upon the mode of intake of the poison. The first one is the inhaled poison. In the circumstances of poisoning by inhalation, the victim should immediately be shifted to fresh air. A clear airway should be ensured and simulated respiration initiated simultaneously. In some cases, the respiratory center of the brain may be stimulated by a mixture of 95% of oxygen and 5% of carbon dioxide. The second one is injected poison. The use of a tourniquet above the spot of injection may slow the absorption. The use of tourniquet should be loosened every 10 minutes for 2 minutes. Imbibe the poison by creating incisions at the spot and use chemical antidotes, cold packing, and vasoconstrictor, for example, injection of epinephrine to prevent absorption. The common example of injected poisons are hypnotics, insulin, snake or other insects bite. The third one is contact poisons. In contact with poisons affecting the skin, mucous membrane, or any wound or introduced in the uterus or vagina, they should be washed with water and neutralized by the application of suitable chemicals. If the poison is applied to the eyes, skin, or wound, the poison is removed with specific antidotes. The fourth one is ingested poisons. The poisons are most commonly ingested orally, depending on the time lapse after ingestion. Much of the poison lying unabsorbed in the stomach should be removed. We have here the stomach wash or gastric lavage. Gastric aspiration and lavage is the only suitable method of emptying the stomach of an unconscious patient. In unconsciousness, protect the airway with a cup endotracheal tube. Before carrying out stomach wash, the patient should be lying in a left lateral position or in a horizontal position with the head hanging over the edge of the bed, and the face positioned downwards so the mouth is at a lower level than the larynx and the chances of aspiration of fluid is eliminated. The gastric lavage tube is gently passed into the stomach through the mouth by lubricating the glycerin or Vaseline jelly up to the distance of 50 cm in adults and 25 cm in children. The position of the tube in stomach can be checked by stethoscope or by putting the upper end in a cup of water. If the lower end enters the trachea, air bubbles will come out. For carrying out stomach wash, initially 250 to 300 ml of warm or 35 degrees Celsius saline or plain water is passed through the funnel held high up. In children, instead of water, 10 to 15 ml or kg body weight of warm saline is used as in them, there are chances of inducing hyponatremia and water intoxication. The stomach contents can be siphoned by the use of a suction bulb. The first sample of stomach wash should be preserved for chemical analysis. Next is emesis. Emetics are substances which produce a gagging effect. Most poisons are emetics and may cause vomiting. However, it is worthwhile to give an emetic to ensure a more exhaustive emptying of the stomach. Emesis is easier than gastric lavage and less distressing for the patient if the patient is conscious and cooperative and vomiting is not contraindicated. The emesis should be avoided as there is the risk of aspiration of stomach contents in an unconscious patient. Emesis should be avoided in corrosive poisoning for fear of damage to the esophagus and stomach. It must also not be used when there is a danger of aspiration into the lungs, either from volatile poisons like petroleum distillates or from inhalation of gastric contents due to impaired consciousness. Emesis should be induced either by tickling the fauces or by emetics. Vomiting can be produced by the use of emetics, of which ipecac is the most effective, whereas mustard powder and warm saline can give rise to complications. Next is catharsis. Catharsis is a very appropriate term when used in connection with poisoning since it means purification. It is done by purging the gastrointestinal tract, particularly the bowel, for all poisonous substances. Cathartics lessens the travel time of the poisonous substances in the gastrointestinal tract, but their efficacy in reducing mortality or morbidity is not established. There are two types of catharsis. The first one is the saline cathartics, and the second one is the saccharide cathartics. Now let us discuss the elimination of absorbed poison. The various methods of eliminating absorbed poisons from the body include the following. The first one is the hemodialysis. The three elementary components of hemodialysis are the blood delivery system, the dialyzer itself, and the composition and method of delivery of the dialysate. For acute hemodialysis, catheters are generally placed in the femoral vein and pass into the inferior vena cava. Blood from one is pumped to the dialyzer through lines that contain equipment to measure flow and pressure within the system. Blood returns to the second catheter. Dialysis begins at a blood flow rate of 50 to 100 ml per minute and is gradually increased to 250 to 300 ml per minute to give the best clearance. The second is hemoperfusion. This is a technique that is progressively becoming popular since it is capable of removing many of the toxins that are not removed well by hemodialysis. An arteriovenous shunt or a double lumen venous catheter is inserted into the patient's vascular tree. The hemoperfusion column and lines are primed with heparinized saline and connected to the shunt or catheter. On commencement of perfusion, a bolus of heparin is injected into the arterial line and heparinization is continued by administering an infusion of heparinized saline. The third one is the peritoneal dialysis. Peritoneal dialysis works on the same principle as hemodialysis, allowing the diffusion of toxins from mesenteric capillaries across the peritoneal membrane into dialysate dwelling in the peritoneal cavity. It involves the insertion of a stylet catheter at the bedside under the local anesthesia or the surgical insertion of catheter in the abdomen. Dialysate fluid is instilled, and 1 to 2 liters is exchanged each hour. The fourth one is the hemofiltration. Hemofiltration is performed similarly to hemodialysis except that the blood is pumped through a hemofilter. An arteriovenous pressure difference induces a convective transport of solute through a hollow fiber flat sheet membrane. This allows a substantial flow of plasma, water, and high permeability to compounds with a molecular weight of less than 40,000. The procedure can be done intermittently at high ultrafiltered rates of up to 6 liters per hour or continuously at rates of 100 ml per hour. Lastly, the plasmapheresis. Plasmapheresis is a technique of separating cellular blood components from plasma. The cells are suspended in either colloids or albumin, or fresh frozen plasma, and then reinfused. It is very effective in eliminating toxic substances but exhausts a heavy toll.
Hi, my name is Jericho Bibaldia, and the topic I'll discuss is antidote. Antidote comes from the Greek word antidoton. Anti means against, and doton means to give. It literally means something to give. What is antidote? Antidote, it is like a medicine or a cure that people consume when they are poisoned. The purpose of antidote is to neutralize or counteract the effect of the poison that people have in their body. Some common mode of action of antidotes. Number one, by formation of inert complex. It is to prevent the poison to move in our body. Yung inert complex is the interaction of antidotes to poison to stop its effects or to prevent its effect. Like for example, in cyanide poisoning, the effects of cyanide poisoning is to prevent our body to use oxygen. And yung trabaho naman ng antidote is to prevent na mangyari yung effect na yon, and eventually i-release niya yung toxicant or poison sa ating katawan. Number two, accelerated detoxification. Its mode of action is to quickly remove the toxin or poison in our body. And number three, reduce toxic conversion. This mode of action is usually for a poison that affects the physical and mental health of a human. Like for example, the methanol poisoning, it causes dizziness, confusion, and ataxia. And by the use of antidote, it reduces those effects. Number four, receptor sites blockage. It binds with the receptor sites of poison to prevent its movement. The receptor sites is the protein inside where the poison attach. Kung saan nakakabit yung poison, dun din magbabind yung antidote, and dun yung napipigilan yung paggalaw ng poison. And number 5, toxic effect bypass. Its mode of action is for the people to not feel the effect of the poison in their body. Classification of antidotes. Number 1, physical or mechanical antidotes. It neutralize or help to stop or prevent the absorption of the poison in our body. And for example, is the activated charcoal. It delays the absorption of the poison in our body because it traps the chemical from the poison. And second example is the Dinglasan. Like egg white, milk, and starch. Its purpose is to coat the mucosa or mucous membrane to prevent the damage of the poison in our body. And last is the bulky food. It traps the poison to spread. Last is bulky food. It traps the poison to spread in our body. Going back to the classification of antidotes, second is the chemical antidotes. It is an agent that can change the chemical nature of poison. It interact with the toxicant or it neutralize the toxicant, and pwede rin niyang manigate yung effect ng poison. Like for example, the sodium thiosulfate for heavy metal poisoning. Nakukuha yung heavy metal poison sa exposure sa heavy metals like mercury and arsenic. Ang effect nito sa ating katawan is bind our part of our cells and prevent our organs from doing their job. And next classification is the physiological or pharmacological antidotes. It counteract the opposite effect of the poison by making a pharmacological effect. So basically, nilalabanan niya yung toxicant bago pa ito lumala. Lastly is the universal antidotes. It's a combination of chemical and physical antidotes. Its effect is both absorbing and neutralizing the effect of the poison, and it is not very effective since It's not made for a specific poison, and it is used only for not known poison.
Hi, I'm Colleen C. Gabriel, and now let's go with the types of antidotes. First, we have the activated charcoal for most poisons, the atropine for organophosphates and carbamates, dixoxin immune fab for dixoxin toxicity, the dimercarpol for arsenic gold or inorganic mercury poisoning, flumazanil for benzodiazepine overdose, the naloxone for opioid overdose, and acetylzilazine for acetaminophen poisoning. Take note, acetaminophen is an overdose. It happens or occurs when someone takes more than the recommended medicine. It may be accidentally or intentionally. And it is the most common when it comes to poisoning, the acetaminophen. Now, here are the causes of death in poisoning. So, poisoning is injury or death due to swallowing, inhaling, touching, or injecting various drugs, chemicals, venoms, and etc. that may cause someone to be poisoned. So, how you treat someone who may have been poisoned? It depends on the person's symptoms, the person's age, and whether you know the type and amount of the substance that caused the poisoning. When to suspect poisoning? Poisoning signs and symptoms can mimic other conditions such as seizure, alcohol intoxication, stroke, and insulin reaction. So, what are the inclusions of some signs and symptoms of poisoning? Here are some: burns or redness around the mouth and lips, breath that smells like chemicals such as gasoline or paint thinner, vomiting, difficulty in breathing, drowsiness, and confusion or other altered mental status. And those are the inclusions of the symptoms and signs when someone is being poisoned. And now, what to do while waiting for help? Of course, when someone is being poisoned, we need to seek some help. And what are the things that we can do while we are waiting for help? First, when the poison is being swallowed, remove anything remaining in the person's mouth. If the suspected poison is in a household cleaner or other chemical, read the container's label and follow instructions for accidental poisoning. Second, poison on the skin. Remove any contaminated clothing using gloves. Rinse the skin for 15 to 20 minutes in a shower or while using a hose. Third, poison in the eye. Just gently flush the eye with cool or lukewarm water for 20 minutes or until the help arrives. Fourth is when the poison is being inhaled. Get the person into the fresh air as soon as possible. Fifth, if the person vomits, turn the person's head or tilt it to the side to prevent from choking. Next is begin CPR if the person shows no signs of life, such as moving, breathing, or coughing. And the last is have somebody gather pills, bottles, packages, or containers with labels and any other information about the poison to send along with the ambulance or on its way to the hospital. And those are the things that you can do while you are waiting for help.